Hello everybody, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I'm here to give you my review of the Netflix original series, Shadow and Bone. Now, Shadow and Bone is based off the YA novel from 2012. It came out, so this isn't that old of a book series that came out. It was a trilogy of books that came out not that long ago, so I expect that this is going to be a trilogy of seasons. The story is about a young girl named, she's about 18. I'd say she's about 17, 18, about 18 years old, maybe 19. They probably aged her up to be about 19 years old. Named Elena, if I recall, Elena, who she lives in this world where it's a time period. Let's put it this way: it's not like old. It's a period, because they have rifles and they have revolvers, so it's not that old, but clearly not everyone has revolvers, like repeating weaponry. Weaponry is sparse, so I don't know what time period you want to say that this fantasy world would be, because it is a time period, but she lives in this fantasy world that where there are these beings called Gracious, and Gracious, Gracious, I think they're Gracious, I think that's how it's pronounced. They have abilities to control things. Fire, wind, they can heal people, they can do all sorts of things. And they're looked upon as the top tier of the crust. These people, they live in a little palace, they got bulletproof vests on. Some people see these guys as heretics, as, witches, and other people see them as something to fear, something useful. It's all kinds of different, different things that people feel about the great Gracious term. And she grew up her whole life with her best friend Mal, not knowing that she was a Gracia, but not just any Gracia. She is the Sun Summoner, the Sun Summoner, which means she can control the power of basically sunlight, and which is a big deal because in this world there's this huge giant smoke cloud just dividing the country in half, called the Fold. And inside of it, not only is everything desolate and dead, but there are these creatures that are flying around and killing people. But the cloud, that huge fold cloud is just so massive that, and it's been there for hundreds of years, that basically lands have started to just build around it, and people have started to take advantage of it, and there are wars raged, and people, if you are and it's hard, and if you try to go around it, there's a problem. If you try to go around the other way, there's a problem. You can't go underneath it. The Fold is a problem. It's a problem. Because it makes it so that it's hard to go around this thing, because there are issues on all fronts. Now, there's mountains to one way, so it's super dangerous, nearly impossible to make it. And the other way, you're going through an enemy country. It's the Fold itself is that Fold is the big bad guy of this entire series, because it looms big over the whole show. But also, there is a character named Alexander. My bad. I don't know what I'm thinking. Alexander. And he happens to be a shadow creator. Now, you might think, oh, wow, that's interesting. There's one of the big things in this show is this thing called the Fold. It's made out of it looks kind of shadowy. I wonder if he's involved in that. And you can go and take a limb that he is involved in that. Now, the show itself, a lot of YA, young adult books, and young adult things that are, translated, sometimes can be a bit glossy. They can be a bit glossy. I think, what was that thing that came out? Was it Divergent? Whatever it was called. I couldn't get into that. That thing was too glossy. So was Maze Runner. I thought Maze Runner was a little too glossy as well. But this show has the benefit of, while it has a very young cast of young faces, cast of young looking people in most of the most important positions, except for Ben Barnes as Alexander, but it's Ben Barnes. He's a perpetually good looking young guy. I don't think that guy I don't think that dude ages. He just looks like a young guy. But so it's a lot of pretty people. Let's put it that way. It's a lot of pretty people. But the way that the world is designed and the way that the world looks is real. The world looks lived in. It's not the most creative fantasy world that I've ever seen. I'd probably say in terms of the way it looks, in terms of the way it looks something a lot akin to My Dark Material. If you've ever seen My Dark Material on HBO Max, or just on, because I think it's on Hulu right now, so you can probably check it out there. But if you ever seen My Dark Material, it kind of has that look to it, of just like that kind of lived in, kind of dirty look, but still sort of fantastical at the same time. This is less fantastical because the fantastical elements only come from the Gracias themselves. There isn't like magic out there. There isn't like different things. Like it just looks like a regular world where there happen to be people who can control shit. You know, it is what it is. But the overall, I'm going to just talk about the two strongest beats about this show. Basically, I think the strongest things about this show is the world, and that it feels real, and that it feels gray, and that it feels like it lives in this area where you're like, you know what, there's a divide racially / just like there's this divide between people, because when you start the show off, you feel like the Gracias are just a snubby above, above everyone. They have powers. Because that's the way a lot of them act. Like, they're just like, you're just people. We have powers. We're beyond people. They kind of act like some Magneto shit. And then you kind of discover, while the show goes on, that it's like, well, the reason they act like that is because it wasn't always like that. It used to be, when you were born and you had these abilities, you were just killed outright. So, they kind of had to, change their attitude and their approach that they had to all of it to survive. So, they keep adding in these gray areas, these gray layers, these different characters' perspectives, how everyone feels differently about everything, how even characters who start off as bad people, by the end of it, they're decent human beings, so et cetera, et cetera. Certain aspects of it are very predictable, and certain aspects of it aren't very, that original. But overall, it did feel like a lived-in real world. It was a fascinating world, and I think if that's all I'm gonna get, that's still cool. I think it peaked on its action though, and maybe it just doesn't have the budget to do the things that it should be able to do. But I still enjoyed some of the action beats too. But I think the strongest aspect of it, shockingly, because I thought I would be just throwing up in a bucket over this bullshit, is the romance between Alyssa and Mal, which is it's a classic romance. But when you do a classic correctly, it's good. I'm not you know me. I'm not as long as you execute what you're supposed to execute correctly, I'm not gonna hold it against you. I don't care if I see it coming. As long as you execute it correctly, it's okay. It's just like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Everyone knew that Falcon was gonna be Captain America, but by the time he became Captain America, I loved it. I knew it was coming, but I still loved it. So same thing with this, was that it's the classic best friends who clearly want to be more than best friends, but both of them are scared to take that step, because both of them are scared that if they take that step, things will be different and things can never go back to the way they were. So they're both just kind of nervous to step that extra step. But they clearly both want to, and they clearly both mean very important things to each other. And I think the two actors who play Mal and Alyssa, they do not Alyssa. Yeah, Alyssa. They do a great job of making me believe in their love, making me believe in them. There's a point in this story where they're separated from each other, and I will admit, whenever the story comes back to them, I'm hoping that they reunite. I'm like, I can't wait for them to reunite. I can't wait for that moment when they reunite, because clearly they mean something to each other. I think they did a great job of putting the flashbacks of them as children in the orphanage in perfect locations to be just a reminder of how long they've been friends, and they've bled for each other. They've literally bled for each other. They've sacrificed for each other. They're more than friends. Whatever they are, they're more than friends. Whether they want to admit it to each other or not, and whether they want to take that step or not, they clearly are more than friends. Clearly, Alyssa has been I'm not going to say she's been saving herself for him, but it's pretty clear that she's been, and he's sort of been saving himself for her too. It's pretty clear that they are they're in game for each other. They know it. They don't want to put it out loud, but they know it. Even though there was a little small spot in the story where I was just like, yo, man, girl, you about to give it all away, man. What you doing? My man Mal is out here working hard to get to you. I ain't gonna lie. There was a point in this story where I was pissed at her, because I was just like, man, because Mal, when she gets taken away, man, he is doing every freaking thing in his power to get back to her. I mean, he really is working overtime. I mean, he went through some ish to get back to her, and she basically gave up on him at a certain point, but still, It is what it is. It all worked out in the end. But overall, I think this is a pretty good show. I think this is a pretty good show. It's a pretty good start, you know. Hopefully, you know, like hopefully it can they can make the world a little bit more. They can kind of build upon what they set here. I think they ended it on a pretty good note, honestly. I think they set up a lot of things, a lot of fun things, really. A lot of fun things, a lot of interesting things. Something that was kind of like one of those things where I was like, I wonder why that happened. And then in the end, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But like I said, they set up a lot of good things, a lot of fun things. It goes how you imagine it would go. But like I said, I enjoyed it. I rather enjoyed this show, Shadow and Bones. I'd give Shadow and Bones like an 8, man. I'd give it an 8 because I had a good time the whole time. I think there's aspects of the show that aren't good, but I had a good time the whole time. I like the main characters. I like most of the main characters. I like most of the main stories. They did a subplot that was kind of sweet and predictable, but it was a sweet little subplot that they threw in there. I had a good time with this thing. So I give Shadow and Bones an 8. You should check it out. If you got nothing else to do, you got nothing else to watch, check out Shadow and Bones on Netflix. You know, it can be a bit teeny, you know, bit, you know, young adult. But, you know, for the most part, it actually isn't as bad as I thought. Because that's why I didn't want to watch it. Because, like, oh, God, young adult. I was like, I don't know about this. But it's not as bad as you think. It's not as bad as I thought. So, I enjoyed myself. Hopefully it gets another season, comes back. I think they got a lot of land. They got a lot of, you know, area to cover. They got a lot of things they can do. A lot of intrigue. A lot of things can happen off of this. So, hopefully, it does. Thank you guys for joining me, Copycat Movie Show. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.